Good evening. Welcome back, folks. John Pettipas recording on the evening of Wednesday evening, the 23rd day of October 2019. And we're doing a very special, in my mind, my opinion, and without question, it's the most special video production we've ever done yet. It's to remember Remembrance Day in Canada for all you dear viewers out in computer land, from Tofino on Vancouver Island to the far north to Cape Spear and Cape Race and beautiful Newfoundland and the Atlantic coast, Great Atlantic Ocean of east coast of Canada, most easterly point in Canada. So all you wonderful folks against all across the north, it's John Pettipas again doing a remembrance, very special Remembrance Day production. And for my dear American cousins, my fellow Americans, Veterans Day on the 11th of November 2019. It's again 7 o'clock in the evening on Wednesday night the 23rd. I grew up in a small community, wonderful community, beautiful community in northeastern Nova Scotia. And across the harbor there was a lady. She's now in heaven with the angels and her children. Wonderful, wonderful lady. God bless her heart. She went through a lot of adversity. And Bertha had two sons that got lost in World War II. They gave their life for the country. Two sons. Not one, two. Bertha only had two sons, and she was a widow. Fortunately, she had a daughter that lived with her, and she lived to a ripe old age. I believe she lived into her late 90s. In fact, she had a sister in Boston, Massachusetts that lived till 6 months shy of her 100th birthday, and at least one of her brothers lived into his 90s. They were a remarkable family. This is why we celebrate Remembrance Day. It's not just a holiday, it's Remembrance Day. We have so many veterans. In fact, everybody mentioned tonight is now in heaven with God, the angels, and the saints that have gone before them. I think we had a wonderful priest in Harbour-Bushy Parish, St. Paul's. His name was Father Bill de Courcy from Cape Breton. A wonderful Cape Bretoner. I always love Cape Bretoners, and they're especially wonderful. He was a gunner in World War II. This wasn't snooping Red Baron. This was real war. He was a gunner in the back of the plane, and he made a covenant with God as a young man. If God spared his life, he would serve Jesus, serve our Savior and Redeemer, the rest of his life as a priest. He was Catholic and went to university, went to seminary, became a priest, and he was a remarkable priest. He just had ability to get stuff done. He was a remarkable fellow. I can think of my Uncle Timmy. Uncle Timmy was my mother's younger brother's husband in the state of New Hampshire, next to Massachusetts, New Hampshire state. And Timmy was there during the many opening days of the Western Front opening on beaches in Normandy. And the poor men were getting slaughtered like flies in many cases. And again, he made a covenant with God. He asked if God would spare his life, he'd stay away from the demon liquor, and he would not smoke. And at that time, what people smoked was tobacco, nothing else. So he did curse. He cursed, and I'll never condemn anybody for cursing, because I would be a hypocrite, and I'm not a fan of hypocrites. So I can't condemn anybody for swearing, cussing, as we say in the Deep South. So Uncle Timmy, great guy, and God did spare his life. I think of the wonderful Mr. Michaud, born in Sherbrooke. Let's shed some light in the matter here. In Sherbrooke, in the beautiful eastern shore of Nova Scotia, he actually hurt his arm cutting wood with a crosscut saw, and he went to enlist in September of 1939 when World War II broke out. And he went to enlist, and they said, "Look, you have a few stitches in your arm. You come back once they've healed." I thought that was unusual considering what his face was, but he went about a month later, the stitches were out, and he went back, and this gentleman went all through World War II. So from late, he went to basic training in would have been mid to late October of 1939, he went to England, all through Europe, and he volunteered for the Pacific Rim after. And of course, the World War II came to a quite sudden end in the Pacific Rim, and so he didn't have to. He was a remarkable man. So I collected in community in late. He was from Sherbrooke. He lived in beautiful Auld, Cove, right by the Council Causeway, way to God's country, Cape Breton. And he lived there for years. He looked after his wife so well. The lady had MS, and he was just a living saint. His wife was a wonderful lady as well, a fine lady in her own right. And when Mr. Michaud passed on in his early 90s, the priest, after he finished his homily in the church, Mr. Michaud was Catholic, the Catholic faith, very good church-going man, and he took it. The priest looked down after the altar, and I'll never forget it. He looked at Mr. Michaud's casket, and he said, "No doubt Jesus will welcome Mr. Michaud into heaven." Bob Michaud, welcome Mr. Michaud in heaven with the words, "Well done, faithful and good servant." There wasn't a dry eye in the church. You could hear a pin drop. And this was just a remarkable man. I think of Millard Kenny from down the shore, from Steep Creek, on the shores of the beautiful Strait of Canso. Steep Creek. In fact, I seen Millard Kenny's widow just a couple of weeks ago. She just celebrated her 86th birthday. And Mr. Millard Kenny was a remarkable man. I'll give you a little personal story. Him and his wife come out in their car on a Sunday night to get their ice cream and buy a few items, and they seen a big display of jellies and jams, and they picked out a bottle and they brought it home. Must have had it with their breakfast next morning or toast, whatever. And they liked it. So there was only a few bottles of that particular variety left on the shelf, and it was kiwi rhubarb, or rhubarb strawberry, whatever it was. I liked the flavor. So the next morning, who comes in his Ford truck? He always bought a North American vehicle. He comes in his Ford truck. He says, "I want some more. There's only a few jars." Hilda says, "Only a few jars up the shelf. I want to get the last 2 jars." And I said to him as he came in the door early in the morning, I said, Millard, what's new down the shore this morning?" It was 1999. They were doing the Sable Offshore Energy Project, putting the laterals for gas for the wallboard plant in the mill over in Point Tupper, and a lateral for the liquids to be fractionated into tane, butane and propane, and what else, the stuff you make plastics out of. Anyway, he said, "John," anyway, he was not a preachy guy, but a real nice guy. He pointed his finger up. He says, "John, I want to tell you this morning, it's as busy as the invasion in Normandy." And he followed up with a statement I'll never forget. And then he pointed with his finger gently and he said, "And I know I was there." As they were bringing, the lateral come across, got beautiful Geisler County, Steep Creek, crossed the Strait of Canso, sunk down, buried in with rocks off of barges, work barges, and up across in the beautiful Cape Breton Island. So he says, "As busy as invasion Normandy," repeat, "and I know because I was there." And he was just a remarkable guy. I was at his wake, I was at his funeral, and I folded up the Canadian flag, the maple leaf that was on his casket. He was of the Anglican faith. His wife was Catholic, brought the kids up Catholic. He was a wonderful man. He faithfully went to his Anglican church. And they folded up, the ministry did the lovely service, in the Mulgrave Legion present at times. It was Mulgrave Legion Branch Cambria. And I'm just going to digress here for a minute. Did you know that most of the legions we have, Cambria is a place in France. Okay, there's Passchendaele. That in industrial Cape Breton, I believe it's Dominion. Passchendaele was a battle that was fought in World War I. Cambria was a World War I battle. Aries branch in Anakinnish. There's Aries in France or Belgium. Okay, so each one of those, Aries, Anakinnish, Nova Scotia, Cambria branch in Mulgrave, Passchendaele in industrial Cape Breton, I believe it's at Dominion. All those ones. Anyway, they folded up the casket. They presented a flag to his widow. And the Legion president said to Mrs. Kenny, his widow, "On behalf of a grateful nation, we present you this flag with our heartfelt thanks." And he paused and he said, "Your late husband, Millard, was a pleasure to know. And true words were never spoken." And something stands out all these ones. Father de Courcy, Uncle Timmy, Millard, Mr. Michaud. They would have went through hell. Not figurative. They went through hell in many cases. They never talked about it much, But each one of those, Mr. Michaud, Millard Kenny, I can go on, they're very kind men for what they went through. There was no bitterness, there was no hardness in them. They were truly were a pleasure to know. I want to mention too, I have a serving tray here. What is the serving tray for? Some of the great women that served during World War II. There's a wonderful lady in North Isle Madame, Rocky Bay. Her married name was Helen Kehoe, and actually I phoned up for telephone number one day, and I just went around them, and who did I got here? Helen Kehoe, and she looked up the number and says, Helen, you're better directory assistance. And she thought it was good. She's since passed on. She worked as a wren. They takes and the women that worked and helped out was up in Guelph, Ontario. She was only probably in late teens, early 20s, and an arena. It was wartime. They'd get the men ready, they'd outfit them out, they'd do their breakfast, lunch, supper, and maybe sandwich for the night before they went to bed. So anyway, they take, and one of the guys comes up, one of the recruits, and she's working away. They take, and he comes up with the tray, and he says to Helen, there's a roach. It means a cockroach on my tray. And Helen didn't miss a beat. Helen looked at him and she said, shh, we didn't have enough to go around. And that's a true story. That's a true story. Her parish priest, one of the late Father J.J. MacDonald that taught the world of her, remembers that story. Now, we've just had an election in this here country, and some people have to grump and complain. We have no right to complain. You look at what Father de Courcy of Cape Breton, Uncle Timmy of Concord, Massachusetts, Mr. Michaud of Sherbrooke and Auld, Cove, Guysborough County. You take Millard Kenny, Steep Creek. You think of what they went through. They all have one thing in common. They never complained. They were not complainers. They were each one of those. And Helen Kehoe, I didn't have the pleasure of meeting her in person, but she was a wonderful lady. Just wonderful. A pleasure to know. Pleasure to know. So again, we had an election. This is why we celebrate Remembrance Day. The late, great Honourable Bill Gillis, our MLA in Antigonish County for 28 years, one time led Lawrence Macaulay. He's a Liberal, but he got re-elected as a Member of Parliament in Eastern PEI, and he will as long as he wants to be. And he's a wonderful man. He was Veterans Affairs Minister under a previous Prime Minister Paul Martin, I believe it was, or Jean Chrétien. Anyway, he told us one night at the Punkin Parish Hall, he said, you see fellas on a bench in the concourse of a mall, or outside in front of a bank or credit union or park. Go up and talk to them, they're a veteran. Say hello. It's a nice day. Let them speak back to you. And he was such a, I never forgot that. That's back in the 90s. Bill Gillis retired in 98. I think that's 95, 96. Remarkable guy, Lawrence Macaulay. Put politics aside. He knew why he was Veterans Minister. And he said, go up and talk. Every one of these, sad to say, are all gone. Is anybody veteran of World War II? And there are some left, thank God, in our presence. But they are getting pretty elderly. And we have veterans of the Korean War. We have veterans of Vietnam. Afghanistan. In America, we have veterans of Iraq. Okay, and this gets me on to America. Old glory here. I went down to see Saintly Aunt Hattie in Boston, Massachusetts, just after her 98th birthday. And every little community you go through, we went through Nova Scotia, southern New Brunswick, into St. Stephen, cross the St. Customs and St. Croix River, and right across the river into Calais, Maine. And in Calais, Maine in some of those areas have seen better times. The Canadian dollar's weak, US dollars, Canadian dollar's strong. You get people coming over to buy milk and products, eggs, chicken, stuff like that. But anyway, when the dollar's at parity, it's not as good business. Some of those places, but it didn't matter if they seen better times, a prosperous community. Every little cemetery along the road had an old glory like this here in front of those headstones. Everyone. That was from Memorial Day in late May. Of course, now we're celebrating Canadian Thanksgiving. and we're celebrating in Europe, as they'll call it, Armistice Day on the 11th. And we celebrate Veterans Day in America, Veterans Day. We can never forget, it's not just a cliche. This is why we wear a poppy. This is why we have wreaths. It's Remembrance Day. Yes, we're tempted to go out in the garden and do garden work. Yes, we're tempted to, I don't know, winterize stuff that has to be winterized, wherever they take, and we have an obligation. We are given freedom. This is why I can do these videos. This is why we had the right to go out and vote on Monday. This is why we can speak our mind, whether we like what we're speaking, and I do speak my mind. I will never make a presentation. I'm not digressing here, but I'm going to make a quick comment. I could never be a good debater. If I don't believe something in my passion, in my heart, I can't do it. I could never debate both sides of the issue. I believe what I believe, and I fervently, I believe, and we should say what we mean and mean what we say. I repeat that. Say what we mean and mean what we say. Anyway, the focus is our wonderful veterans. And speaking of wonderful veterans, I have one more point. This is a cap I received. This gentleman was a veteran of the Vietnam War. Veteran of the Vietnam War. And I received it from this gentleman on Thursday morning, the 15th day of August, 2013. From a wonderful Vietnam veteran, now a baker in Rochester, New York. And if he's watching on the YouTube through the beauty of what you call these internet computer machines, this is your cap, sir. He was in on a trike, on one of these three-wheeling type bikes that they make now. So wonderful man. So whether you served in Afghanistan, Iraq, Vietnam, Korea, the blessed World War II veterans that grace us with their presence, each and every one of you, we owe a debt of gratitude. And at this time, we're going to have a special presentation musically. A sincere and heartfelt thank you to all veterans, past, those who are in heaven now with our Savior and Redeemer, all veterans present. This is John Pettipas, wishing every veteran, past and present, all the best, and God bless each and every one of you, and thank you very, very much for your service. Good night, and please pass on the video to other people these coming weeks in Veterans Day, and get out to service or be kind to veterans we have in our presence, and their widows, and their other people that are helping them out. Okay, they've helped them so much for us. Be kind to the veterans and their widows, and remember them. Maybe a little bit of baking, some apples, or just a simple hello, and exchange pleasantries and hear them out. I've never spoken to a veteran yet and not come away learning more. Thank you and good night.